All right, here we are today with Ben and Jonathan, and we're going to be talking about some Enneagram fun, some Enneagram wing fun, and maybe some instinctual variant stuff, depending on how much time we have. So, Jonathan and Ben, thank you for joining me today. And I actually was curious if you could elaborate a little more, Ben, on the fact that you thought Jonathan was a, what was it, one wing
Well,
two? Like, why?
yeah, see, years and years ago, we were
Hailey,
talking.
You're being very naughty. I can't go
Years,
into that. So over to
years ago,
Jonathan.
years ago, we were doing some videos on me on Enneagram 1. When we got to the wings, Ben fell asleep in the middle of the recording.
It was the third one. It was a long night, and
Yeah.
I apologise profusely about that.
But I still like to
But
bring it up. Just
however,
annoying.
recently I went back and I watched and it's your best video, your Enneagram 1 and Faith video. I highly recommend that to people who wish to learn more about Jonathan.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll take your word for
So,
it. I don't watch any
okay,
of those
I'll have to
videos.
watch that video then. Yeah, see, I'm the same way. I don't either. Okay, so yeah, I wanted to maybe talk a little bit about, Jonathan, if you could elaborate on the differences you've seen or noticed between a 5-wing 4 and a 5-wing 6 type, and like how that might manifest in their behavior, or just about them.
Okay, so type 5s are usually INTJs and INTPs. That seems to be a constant, like core 5s. So INFJs and INFPs might sometimes mistype as that. But really, you have to understand the 5 is fundamentally a rational person. And they're not going from their feelings. The 5-wing 4 is more interested in feelings and from an intellectual perspective. So if you think all 5s want to be experts, there's a drive to be experts, there's a drive to be a specialist and have expertise in whatever it is they devote their mind to, because that gives them confidence and a sense of security. The 5-wing 4 will be more of an expert in, stereotypically, more into the arts and humanities, whereas the 5-wing 6 stereotypically will be more into science and politics and so on. Now, this is a bit trickier when it gets down to real life, because in real life you get things like science fiction authors like Isaac Asimov and that sort of thing. I've seen people like that typed as 5-wing 4, and I think it's just because they're authors. I would type them as 5-wing 6 because there's a lot of that hard science fiction sort of deal. Whereas there's 5-wing 4s who are scientists and into politics and stuff, but they'll have a very clear interest in humanities and existentialist things. So the way I would think about it is that the 5-wing 4 thinks like an existentialist philosopher. Like, that's the thought process, regardless of what they do with their life. They're thinking like an existentialist philosopher, whereas the 5-wing 6 is thinking like an analytical philosopher, which is a branch that's more about supporting science and supporting a scientific view of the world. So this also means the fundamental fears of the 5-wing 4 and the 5-wing 6 are a bit different. The 5-wing 4, deep down, when they're less healthy, the whole side of it is nihilism, a sense of meaninglessness and purposelessness. They're trying to, so the 5-wing 4 is accumulating knowledge in order to either find an answer that shows nihilism is wrong, makes people secure, or to at least protect themselves from nihilism, like, or a sense that other people don't know how much, how meaningless the world is, but I do, and I know how it's meaningless, and that gives me a sense of control and security. So if you think of, well, I won't give examples because it's a bit complicated. Whereas the 5-wing 6 will be drawing more on the 6 if they're unhealthy, so they'll be more kind of paranoid, a bit more anxiety. It's more external. They're not as concerned with their internal emotion stuff. They can seem a bit friendlier sometimes. Some 516s can seem friendlier than some 514s because they're drawing from the 6 in the sense of loyalty and camaraderie. But that means they're more worried about what's going on around them, and their sense of security is more dependent on what's around them. So again, I'll go into the sort of paranoid sort of thing. And I was going to say something and I lost it. But yeah, that's a quick overview.
Oh, so Hailey, I was just going to say, if you click on the little image at the bottom, if you're not in maximize mode, you'll be able to put some graphics on for the audience. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Jonathan. It's very interesting because as a 5-wing-4 and husband's a 5-wing-6, that hit the nail on the head for both of us. That's very much what I've observed with our behavior and how we seem to be. So that's very interesting. Something else I wanted to make a comment on is I've noticed between my husband and I that we seem to, okay, I fit the stereotypical NI heavy where it's like we'll be watching something and I'll just call it like this is going to happen. I mean, I can see it a mile away, and he'll be like I feel very much the prophet ENI type, whereas he's more of like the analytical kind of like not as NI heavy as I am. And I don't know if the wings come into play here or what that is, but that's definitely something that we've noticed.
Yeah, I would expect the INTJ 5-wing-4 to be more NI heavy and the INTJ 5-wing-6 to be more TE heavy. Because the 5-wing-6 will be more of a skeptic. Skepticism of the 6. When you get 5 and 6 together, particularly, there's a stronger sense of skepticism. Whereas the 5-wing-4, a bit more introverted, a bit more into their emotions, a bit more willing to be abstract, and more interested in, more willing to entertain kind of less scientific ideas and more mystical ideas, perhaps, because they're not, in a sense, the 5-wing-4 is more comfortable with their thought. They're a bit, I would say, arguably, they're a bit more comfortable trusting their judgment than the 5-wing-6, because the 5 does trust their own judgment, but the 6 does not trust their own judgment. The 6 is more dependent on other sources of information, whether that be other people or authority figures or books or science or religion, whatever it is. The 5-wing-6 will still want something empirical out there. Usually the 5-wing-6 won't be so religious, perhaps. Well, sometimes they can be, but whereas the 5-wing-4, because of that more existentialist streak, because of the more of the 4 in there, is a bit more open to putting science to one side for a second.
Yeah, I very much relate to that, and that's what I've seen. That's so interesting to me. That's so interesting. There was something I was going to comment on regarding that, and I cannot remember what it was.
We're the same.
Yeah, thank you very much for the graphics, Ben. That is wonderful. I'm trying to remember what the heck I was going to say right now regarding that. Pardon the kids going by.
I feel your pain.
Okay, I'm going to just take a second and read this. Yeah, there's a school right down here, so kids going by often. But yeah, that's definitely something I've noticed between the two of us. And, you know, I do seem like I have this strong innate, and I sometimes don't like it. Like, okay, I have this strong innate, I feel like I know. And I don't feel like I know why I know, but I just feel it so strongly, like this is it, or this is the answer. And I know, like, my objectiveness pulls me back out, like, hold on a second, do you have anything to substantiate this? And I definitely feel like I trust my gut instinct or my gut, you know, intuition more than my husband, who seems like, yeah, he's going to be more skeptical of it.
I wonder if that.
There was. Oh, go ahead.
I wonder if your choice of words there affects it, because you were saying that you feel you can trust this, whereas I wonder if a 5.6 would say, "I think I can do that." I could be talking
Yeah,
at my
that's
backside.
interesting.
I could be talking at my backside with that, but yeah. One way to think of it is that
Well,
the
no, that's
wing.
something I feel like he would say. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One way to think about it is
There.
the wing.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, are we out of sync? I think there's a bit of audio delay. Ben, can
We
you
might
hear
be
it?
a little bit.
Yeah, I think there's a little delay on
Haley's
end, but if we just,
Uh-oh.
but I'll just say something about a cheeky interpolation that I think that the INTJ resembler is, it's like they are more intuitive than they let on, because it's that thing of where Hailey said, it's like, can I substantiate this? And so it's like their overall rational temperament of like going towards reason and going towards facts. And it's like, well, you strongly feel that something's going to happen, but you're not going to say it unless you have the reason and the facts, like the sort of like the rational, this kind of NT kind of justification for it.
You know, it feels very much innate, but it's conflicting because this is just natural. Like, so on very many things, I feel so strongly like something's going to happen, or like I know the answer to something, but like I find myself keeping my mouth shut because it's like I know I can't substantiate this, and I'm going to sound like a nut if I'm just like, oh, I just feel this is going to happen, and oh yeah, okay, like okay, you know, I could never tell somebody just based on that, like, hey, I just feel like. So I keep a lot of that to myself, but I mean, I can't deny that it's very, very prevalent in myself. But I guess what's also innate is the whole like, can I substantiate this? But that always comes second. It always comes, but it always comes second.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. One way to think of it is that the wings are kind of the supporting the core type. So you could say like I'm a one-winged eyed, so I would say I like peace in order to get to correctness. Like I want peace in my environment and harmony in order to get to the right answers and do the right thing. Whereas a 9-wing one would be the opposite. They'd want things to be correct so they can find peace. So with regards to the 5-wing 4 will be thinking, I need to be my emotions in order to be more knowledgeable. Whereas the 5-wing 6 is thinking, I need to be more skeptical in order to be more knowledgeable. Well, the 5-wing 4 will be their emotions, but also their intuition. Whereas the 5-wing 6 more skeptical, more into the authority, as a way of getting to the knowledge. Because the 5-wing 4 will be thinking that the 5-wing 6 is too dismissive of abstract, mystical things that may or may not be true, but will have something to say. Whereas the 5-wing 6 will be thinking the 5-wing 4 is a bit wishy-washy and cookie, perhaps.
I'll just interject something about INTJ. So in Kersey and in Galenka, they both see the sort of critical nature of the INTJ. So Victor has this system of NI minus and NI plus, and he has INFJ as NI plus. Now, sometimes some people might beg to differ with that, say if the INFJ is also a 4. But generally, INTJs do think that idea of NI minus, where it's like minimizing the negative, minimizing how things can go wrong. And then when we look at Kersey has INTJ as predisposed towards the mastermind role. And so that's the role of the coordinator arranger. And so they're naturally thinking about how things can go wrong and then what to do. If A goes wrong, we do B. And if B goes wrong, we do C. This natural. And so that's the arranger of contingencies. So there's that natural sort of negativity built in towards INTJ that you're going to have that overlap with if you've got like a 6 wing in there. So maybe an INTJ 5 wing 6 is going to be a little bit more negative than an INFJ 5 wing 4, or negative in slightly different ways.
Yeah. So do you know what your husband's instinct is, or do you have a suspicion?
We were talking about this actually before we hopped on here, and I would actually say, from what I know of him, he's an SP first, SPSX.
Self-praised sexual. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's another thing that could happen, because the sexual instinct is more romantic, but it's also into deep conversations, and can be a sort of mystical side to it in itself, like a spiritualist interest, whereas the self-praise is more grounded and reality-based.
Yeah.
Or tries to be. That's going to vary slightly by. That's not an absolute, but that's more of a general sense. There are self-praise types that are perhaps a bit more open to that sort of thing, but generally sexuals are leaning spiritual, whereas self-praise is leaning grounded. So the way to understand that, the self-praise 5, all 5s, as I said, want to be knowledgeable and want to be experts. The self-praise 5 is thinking, I have to be knowledgeable and an expert in order to survive and to prosper and to be secure and consider my resources. So they'll be thinking in terms of, their job and their money. Walter White, I was mentioning, the Breaking Bad character, he's very much a self-praise 5, even when he's got cancer, so that'll put him in self-praise anyway, but even out with that, he's very concerned with money and leaving things behind for his family and providing for his family. Whereas the sexual 5 is called confidence. It's about a confidant, like someone you can be open with and trust with your inner world and your inner fantasy life and your secret self. Is a matter of trust. So they're thinking, I need to be knowledgeable and be an expert in order to have someone to share my rich inner world with, or to support my favorite people individually. And the social is thinking about supporting their friends or contributing to a group or being the group expert or being an expert among experts, like sharing knowledge, but more of the shaman totem sort of person is the social 5. If that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely so.
I have an anecdote. Well, a sort of anecdote by proxy, because I remember, Hailey, we talked in the past and you've said openly about that the 5 is stingy with like time, energy, and money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And maybe you could tell the audience like an anecdote about, like, because I remember you were saying like how, like, examples of your thriftiness when it came to money in the past, and it's like
In the past.
Oh, here we go. Please elaborate.
Well, one of the downsides about being in Monaco is that there's no thrift stores. I hate it. And I mean, part of it is the parsimonious side, but the other part, I don't know, there's something about finding a quality piece of clothing that's, it's like you're going on a treasure hunt. That's how I feel. It's just exciting, and you feel like you're getting so much value for, it's not just that, it's like what money represents. It's part of your time, time out of your life that you spent to acquire this. So it's like, I'm going to use this sparingly. I'm going to really make it work for me. And I just can't see okay, quality is one thing, but most of these shops going in paying $5,000 for a shirt, no matter how much money is in the bank, I can't justify that. Unless it was like a one-time thing and I loved it. And I'm very proud of that. And I don't care. I
remember you buying stuff from the thrift store and the prices that you were able to get. I don't know if you wish to make them public, about the
Yeah, no.
prices.
In South Texas, you could buy a shirt for like $3. Yeah, brand new, tag still on. Man, I'd throw that shit in my cart. Oh yeah, win. I love it. And I can't get that here, so.
Yeah, so I think you very much fit that part of the 5, like the time, energy, and money part of the 5. What about energy and the way you spend energy?
Yeah, I would say I'm a very low energy type. Actually, this is about as much socializing today as I'm going to get, and I'm not sad about that.
Oh, thank you.
Well, it's a pleasure, but really, I'm very much not a people person. If I leave my house once a week, that's a lot. My husband's the same way. I feel like we're very much in sync and that we both have our own projects. Like we know we're here, like the other ones in the other room. It's just we have such a great flow, and I feel so blessed to have found somebody who doesn't drain my energy. Like I can be around them all the time, but I feel alone with him, but in the best way. Like I feel like I can really be me and work on my stuff without having someone else like yanking on my shirt, like, oh, let's go to the mall, let's go out, let's go out, let's go out. And I'm just like, dude, I can't. But yeah, I'd say I'm a very low energy type. I plan selectively where to use my energy. For example, like my lifting day is very obviously physically active for me, but that's my day. Like my lifting day is my lifting day. I don't do anything else. If I'm lifting on that day, I'm sorry, I can't go out and meet you. We can't go to dinner. It's just, that's like takes up the whole day for me. Even though I'm only lifting for like 3 hours, it's like I need all of my mental energy and physical energy to focus on that solely. And I wish I had more energy, but I just don't.
Yeah, that's one of the things I say about INTJ is they are a low energy type, and it's because they spend their energy so productively, and by the amount that an INTJ can get done. If you say to somebody they're a low energy type, it's like they'd look at you askance, and it's like, what do you mean? They get a lot
That's
done.
true.
They seem to be very busy, but it's they spend their time very carefully. So what do you like with time?
True.
What do you like with time?
Yeah, I mean, I plan everything, even on my off days. Like I know exactly, like I'm gonna get up at this time, eat. Like it's not necessarily planned based on the clock. It's planned based on events for me. Like I do one thing after another, and I try to like keep everything conserved. Like I'm not super strict as far as, oh, this has to take 30 minutes, and then immediately move on it. But I know, like I have a set schedule in my mind of how my days are gonna go, what I'm gonna do. And even like with my husband, if we're going out or if we're even like, staying in on a relaxed day, we'll plan the day like, hey, we can get up, have a nice dinner outside, like on the terrace together, around this time. Like we're still very much planning oriented and mindful of time, even though I would say that with both of us, okay, with him a little more so because he's obligated due to the markets and he has to be in front of his computer due to that. But for the most part, he's kind of like me in a sense of he's not super strict on like, oh, this is going to take 20 minutes flat and then immediately move on. It's like, no, but we are very scheduled in that one thing definitely comes after another. And we kind of have to know, like, it makes us feel very comfortable to know, like, if I don't know what's going on, I feel very stressed out.
Yeah, I can relate to all that.
And I'll just say that I like to make this point that Socionics needs to swallow its pride over JP. So obviously we've got Hailey, like she leads with a perceiving function, but her behavior is so J. It's like, and we mentioned this sort of last time, it's like to design questions that would capture Hailey's perceiving nature and get around that powerful organizing behavior would be extremely difficult to try and design those kind of questions. So it seems MBTI was right with the way they did the JP, like how someone organizes the world. And that's one of the reasons why Socionics doesn't have a good test, because they can't get the JP questions right. But that's just a digression. Any thoughts there? Any differences, Jonathan, between the way the 5 wing 6 and the 5 wing 4 views time, energy, and money?
I will say really quick, it's funny because my husband has commented many times over the last few years that he never thought he'd meet anyone as stingy as he was. But he also says that I am more stingy than he is, and it's true. Oftentimes he'll be like he'll comment like, oh, well, maybe you might like a nice purse, and I'm just like, no. I mean, I have to love it. I mean, I understand he wants to get me something nice, and that's very nice, but I'm just like, dude, go buy me a burger or something. But it's very true with us anyway. I do not want to spend money, and he's just kind of like, yeah, maybe this month we might go out and get a burger or something, or like spend money, and I'm often the one being like, no, we don't need to. Like, why? So
yeah, that's also how the self-press shows love. The self-press shows love by providing for the people
that's
they love.
interesting. Okay.
And giving material things,
Yeah.
whereas the sex shows love and feels love more like just being with the other person. That's enough.
Right. Yeah.
So, Hailey, do you and your husband still? This is a slight digression, but I'll get back on track. Do you and your husband still follow Peter Schiff?
No. I'm
I
sorry.
thought you said, because I remember he said that you followed the guy who was similar to Peter Schiff.
Are you talking about Maloney?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do watch some of Mike Maloney's content. We actually, the very first weekend we met, we had a Mike Maloney marathon, which is kind of funny. I mean, that's a whole story in and of itself. Like, he flew over to the Rio Grande Valley, from Monaco to meet me, and we met in the hotel room, and the next day, what are we doing? We're having a Mike Maloney marathon. So just kind of funny, but no, we don't necessarily watch Peter Schiff's information. We don't watch a lot of Mike Maloney's information that much either. But
you sort of got the viewpoint though. Like are you both interested in hard money and gold and
yes,
criticism of fiat currency, that kind of stuff?
Yes, very
Right,
much.
Yeah. And so are you both thinking like it's sort of might tie into your natural predisposition of this the whole system's going to go to hell in the handbasket. We need to be prepared.
Pretty much. Absolutely.
Yeah. So a relevant digression, back on track.
I believe, Jonathan, you were going to go into, before, I'm sorry, we've cut you off. I apologize. But you were going to go into the differences like in 5-wing 6 and 5-wing 4 on their parsimony, or you were talking about how the 5-wing 6 feels they need to be more of a provider.
No, the self-pres 5.
Self-pres 5.
All the self-pres types show love by if you know love languages.
Okay.
Yeah. What are the love languages again? I'll get up. I mean, I know them in the back of I know them.
I'll get the graphic and put it in the folder. So you've got like words of affirmation, you've got acts of kindness, and you've got those things. I'll bring up the graphic.
Gift giving. That's what I'm thinking of. The gift giving is something that self-pres 5s can, or self-pres types can be drawn to. It's not absolute, but I would expect most self-pres types to have gift giving as relatively high on their list, whereas I want to find probably.
If you just wait a moment, I can get them. I'm just copying them across now, and I'll be able to show them on screen. I've just got to go to the.
Yeah. Whereas
here we go. One moment. There we go.
Yeah. So I would expect. This would be partly due to the instincts, but also partly due to your Enneagram type. I would expect the self-pres types to be generally good at giving gifts and receiving gifts, providing for their loved ones, giving not necessarily just gifts, but also like a home and money and things like that, security, comfort and security. That's how they show love. Whereas the sex shows more just want to spend time with the person and also having deep conversations with the person they love. and just talking about what goes on, what they're really thinking, and going deep with them. The social is more about doing things with their loved one, shared interests. So yeah, if you're going with by Enneagram,
I'll just interpolate that acts of service is going to be more towards those with FE and SI, especially SFJs are going to do a lot of acts of service.
could be. It could also be. Could also be social and sort of things.
Yep.
Yes. Whereas words of affirmation is very core for the heart types, the 2, 3, and 4. They really want the words of affirmation. So the 2s really want to be told that they're a good person, that they're a kind person, they're a helpful person, that they're generous, that they're loving, and they'll need to be told that at least 3 times a day. They like to be told at least 3 times a day, and the more they hear it, the more they like it. It confirms their self-image, because the heart types are also the image types. The image they're presenting, in their mind, that's who they are. They are who they appear to be, and the type of image they try to present. Whereas the 3 is thinking they want to be seen as successful. They want to be told that they're successful, that they're efficient, that they're winning, that they're doing well, that they got this. The 3 is the sort of person that looks in the mirror and tells itself, you got this, you can do this, you're the winner. That's why the 3 can be known to brag. And the reason 3s can brag is because they want to hear it from others, and if they can't hear it from others, they'll tell themselves that that's why they're bragging. Whereas the 4 is more special, flawed, unique, rare, vintage. That's how they want to be seen. More like this can even affect how the heart types dress. Like the 4 will be going more for like vintage clothes and unique clothes, and not wanting to wear the same thing as someone else. Whereas the 3 is more like the brand name and the successful image. Whatever's popular. Yeah. Whereas
I was just going to comment so much your. Go ahead, please.
No, you go ahead.
Well, I was just going to comment that so much you're discussing regarding the 3, I just don't relate with. I mean, I don't care about brand names, like all this stuff. Like, I care about success as far as I define it, but all these other, impressing others, brand names,
Well, we can discuss that some other time.
So,
obviously, there's restrictions here, but
yeah, and in fact, that
understood.
goes together with Hailey and the clothes that you used to buy. It's like buying these like thrift store clothes. Obviously, that's congruent with like not caring about brand labels. And that,
yeah, right.
Yeah, so
And used to buy, would still be buying.
Yeah. So that could mean that your heart type is last, or it could mean that your heart type is not 3. We could discuss that some other time. Yeah, and the 2 is more stereotypically bright, friendly clothes. Or also, if you see like someone in a leopard print, or whatever, that's usually a 2. Usually the SE ESFP.
Okay. In England, it would be the certain class things with leopard print and.
Oh yeah, but also it's the 2 has a militant side and a strong side. 2 also seems kind of strong.
So, for instance, in England, it would be. I would imagine in the United States as well. Leopard print, you might go towards a stereotypically sort of working class kind of ESFP, artisan kind of vibe. Although there was the character of Dorian, who was upper middle class in Birds of a Feather, who wore leopard print, but she saw herself as a bit of a cougar, so maybe that's associated with the cougar image as well.
That's also
and not just because of cats.
That's also kind of 2-ish as well. I'd say all of cougars are 2-ish.
Sexual too, maybe, yeah.
Or self-pressed sexual. No, pardon me. But yeah. So
are there any of these? Are there any of these would you like to look at? Like I've got.
Yes, I would like to look at this one for a second and ask. So, what about the 5-wing 4? What would they typically gravitate towards?
Uh,
What do you think? Because I have one that stands out for me, absolutely. And I don't know if this is typical, but I don't care. I mean, it is what it is.
what is it?
Oh, I
Physical
get
touch.
the context.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah, I would
absolutely touchy-feely.
I would associate that more with gut types. Gut types like physical touch. So that could be what we were talking about earlier. Gut type being stronger than hard type for you. Yeah, we can always just. I mean, remember when I typed you before? That was years and years ago. I've got more better, so we can discuss it more in depth another time, if whatever. But yeah, so I associate physical touch more with gut types, or people strong in the gut center. And that makes sense because they got the body. That's what that is. Acts of service. That could be social actually, but also
However, I will say that quality time.
yeah, quality time is
I'm sorry. I
definitely.
think there's a little bit of a lag.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to comment that quality time and words of affirmation are very high up there. But if I don't have physical touch, like that's absolutely necessary for me.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
Ben, could you please go back to the graphic on
That
the
one, the last
self-pres,
one.
sexual, and social?
Okay, I'll go back up. I think this one, is that it?
Yes. Yeah, that's the one. You know, an interesting difference I've noticed between myself and my husband is that I can come across as more sensitive, but only with him. With other people, I don't necessarily care, but with him, I'm very influenced by his mood. Example, if he's stressed out or upset, I literally cannot work. I can't focus until I know he's okay.
Ah.
It's so weird. I've never been like this. And it's, I wish I could shut him out and tune him out. And we've talked about this. Like, he's like, well, why don't you just, ignore it? I'm going to be fine. Just keep working. And I just cannot. If I know he's troubled or stressed or I just cannot work on what I'm doing. Like if I'm taking pictures or shooting photos, I will just sit on the bed until I know he's okay. Like I just cannot. It's so strange. So I don't know if that ties into the very sensitive part, but he doesn't seem to be like that. So that's an interesting difference between the two of us. And something I've noticed with him is that oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that there might be a way to sort of analyze in terms of functions what's going on, whether it's FI or FE, in that, is it, say, the look on his face or the stuff that, so if it was the look on it, because I think there's like two mechanisms you can sort of get there. Like, I think it
comes down to my core fear, which is feeling like I'm a burden.
Right.
And I somehow tie that into I'm the problem. And I know it's not me, but yeah, I can't seem to separate myself and being a burden from that. And so it's not until I know he's okay that I can be like, okay, just relax. You're not a burden. It's over. Just keep working, so.
Yeah, it might be like one of these tricky situations where sort of functions break down and it's not easy to say, is that an example of FE in Hailey, or is it an example of FI in Hailey? Because it's like, is somebody sort of introjecting, taking the emotions in? Because there are some people where a guardian, it's like, if they see an expression on someone's face, even if it has nothing to do with that, goes straight into them. Right. So it's more an FI thing. Right. It's an FI. But also in tone of voice?
Well, more like a table bang.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
That is one of the things that Dario noticed, that FI people, very sensitive to emotional feeling and sentiment in voice and attributing things to that, just the way something is said. So various.
Yeah, I feel like I can be.
Yeah, I think that's just general feely kind of stuff. It's hard to say. It's hard to sort of like pin a tail on a donkey and say, oh, that's FE. That's a rare use of FE in INTJ.
Well,
It's
to be
just
fair,
an example, but it is feeling.
well, I will say that I am not like this with anybody else.
Yeah, that makes me think it's FI. Yeah.
This is I hate, but I cannot pull myself out of it until he's okay.
Yeah, I think that's consistent with.
And maybe this is down to the sexual instinct.
Yeah, and the full wing as well. Yeah. Yeah, because I give you Hailey as an example. When I talk about INTJs can have strong FI, I give you as an example and say how that feeds in with the forewing and the sexual instinct. There's these things that sort of can amp up the certain elements of FI.
Would you, Ben and Jonathan, say that the sexual 5, like just as is, not necessarily sexual 5 INTJ, but they're one of the least common types? Because I find that when I run across other INTJs like online, we don't really relate, and I think that could play a big part into it.
Yeah, like 5's pretty rare. It's quite 5s are often INTJ, but 5s is a whole relatively rare compared to other types. The most common types are 6 and 9, maybe 3.
Yeah. This is because a lot of guardians are 6s and most 5s. So Jonathan, can I put it like this? So INTJs and INTPs are mostly 5s, but they're quite rare types. Like I would argue, like 1% of the population each is like INTJ and INTP. The question is, though, out of all of the 5s, what percentage of all of the 5s are INTs?
I'd say almost all of them, really. Almost all the core 5s.
Right. So there's going to be
maybe some exceptions.
Right. So you're looking about 1% of the population might be a genuine.
Well, INTPs
one
are
or two.
INTJs.
Yeah, but I'm a little bit like Kersey in that I kept reducing the amount of intuitives in the population. It's just that in certain fields, intuitives are a lot more than the general population.
One thing to keep in mind also, INTJs, 5s are often INTJs, but INTJs, although they're relatively often 5s, they could be 1s, they could be 6s, could be perhaps 9s sometimes. So it's not like every INTJ is going to be a 5.
Yeah.
And when they are 5s, of course, you've got their instincts and things like that to vary up as well. So even if they're 2 5s together, different instincts would be things to consider.
But Jonathan, do you think it is? I'll just say, Hailey, and then I'll shut my trap. But every now and then you get like an ISTP 5 or an ISTJ 5. Is that right, Jonathan?
Possibly. That's a bit. Yeah, there's.
Because usually ISTJ would be like 6-wing 5, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I mean, we are talking about my views and things.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily something other ENNEAGRAM teachers would say, but
yeah, but you know more about Jungian type than they do, most of them.
Yes, that's true. Yes, I am pretty brilliant.
Yeah, sorry for cutting you off, Hailey.
No, it's all right. I'm enjoying the banter. I just had another question regarding what you think about the percentage of INTJ types being sexual.
I'd say it's stereotypically the INTJs would be self-praised. I have seen others INTJs who I think are sexual though.
Do you think they resemble myself?
There's differences between them and you, but I can explain that with other systems. Like I've learned about something called facial archetypes in the micro teachings, which is like there's 7 types of face, basically, or head shape, face shape, and that can explain like the INTJs that seem really big smile. It doesn't really go to their eyes, but the INTJs that are smiling a lot, and some INTJs have a forced smile, some can really smile, whereas you're not so much that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I said that a little joke with Hailey about her smile. And it's like blink and you miss it. It's like it's there and it's gone. Whereas ESFJ is the opposite. It's like if an ESFJ is not smiling, oh no, what have I done? Kind of thing.
Yeah. So there's things like that to consider. It's not like I've done any big study or anything on the actual numbers of these things. I would say that sexual fives they're there, they do exist. Maybe you just haven't come across them. And if you're not on social media, maybe you won't see them as much either. But
are they also more likely to be 5-wing-4 than 5-wing-6, the sexual 5?
perhaps. But I'm sure there's sexual 5-wing-6s out there. But yeah. I might be able to share a video of someone I think is a sexual 5. But I'm not totally certain on them. They are a bit different from you, like from a visual perspective, but they were talking about sexual stuff, I thought.
Yeah. Oh, I should mention the fact that there is a tendency, what I've noticed, that female INTJs who might be sexual 5 might have a tendency to look like they're dual ESFP and could get mistyped. It's like you said, we've had this before, like we've discussed with Hailey before, like people who do drive-by typings of Hailey just based on her appearance, and they'll go, oh, ESFP. And it's like, no, I've seen this before. This with you saw it with Jessie Ensley, Dizzy Dolly, in the way she presents herself. And you can see this in some female INTJs. You probably think, oh, they're a sexual 5. They can present as ESFP, and I think that's the inferior extroverting instinctor. And you've got that combination of this suggestible, and I changed it from suggestive to suggestible. And it's like when we talked before, like, hey, like you can get like when you drive wrong, it's like you forget you're into that instinct. And so if you've got that instinct and you've got the 5-wing-4 and the sexual 5, that can sort of come out in the way maybe the female INTJ dresses. There is a tendency, and it's one of the ways to tell the difference because I think you can tell the difference. All of those IN types, the female versions of all of those types tend to dress. There tends to be themes in the way they dress.
If you say so.
You can't just go off it, but there are themes there, and it fits in with the romance style. So let's just say an INFP is not want to dress in a way that attracts the STP. There are exceptions, but it's just one of these extra data points. Like if you look at the way Tamsi presents herself, she even the way she names herself, sensual mystic. Like sort of like you get in the sensuality and the suggestible extroverted instinctor or extroverting instinct is sort of like put out there a bit more in these NI DOMs. Whereas with INFP, the INFP female is more sort of turned off by that with the interaction styles and them being SE polar, and they don't like that kind of aggressiveness. So it all sort of binds together in the way they present themselves. And so thematically, it's not all of them. It depends on it's just one of these sort of like things that you can sort of notice. And it's enough that people doing a drive-by typing of Hailey, and it's like, oh, she's ESFP. Oh, that's your well-considered opinion, then, is it? You just type somebody based on their appearance.
I think
I've been typed based on my voice.
Really?
Yeah, I have a high squeaky reality star voice, so she's an ESF something.
Yeah, I think was it Dario that said that each type is like 3 variations? They're either like an INTJ would either be look like an ENTJ, or look like an ISFP, or look like a more INTJ as they get older. I think
Yeah, I can see that.
I think Dario said something like that.
Yeah,
So
I can see that, the ISFP one. So maybe the sexual 5 INTJ could look a bit more ISFP-ish, and that where the suggestible. It's just that suggestible because you know how I like to call it instinct. I think it gets bound up with sexuality. In that, with the suggestible, because sexuality is a big part of the instinct at play in INTJ. So I just think that you can sort of see these various. Now, obviously, something else that's going to play into it is the self-image of the woman who's dressing in a certain way. Yeah, it's just a sort of a trend which I have noticed. It's just like, as a counterexample, if you have an ESFP, so if the ESFP is happy with their body, they're going to dress in quite a alluring way. But if they're physically insecure, they're not going to dress in an alluring way. So that is one of these sort of non-type factors that comes across. So, for example, if people want to find out more about this, if you watch the video on Jeff's channel, if you just type in ESFP preference versus reality. So here's an example of someone with ESFP preferences, but he doesn't sort of act there, you know, as like the charisma man, like that, like, because like if you're an ESFP male or female, and like you're very comfortable in your skin, then there's a kind of easiness and sensuality to that type. So just look at them as say performers, as actors and actresses. These ESFPs, there's a natural way they sort of carry themselves if they're happy in their skin. But Jeff, if you watch, but in Jeff would be an example of, and so he did this video where he was off. It was on my channel, and he was off camera for about 2 to 3 years, and he did that thing, and he was concerned about his weight, and he did videos on his own channel, and he was concerned about his weight. So the physical appearance and body image is a big part of it. And in your case, Hailey, I think you said that you really got into fitness, and you did it for you. Is that very much? And like, and you talked about how you felt, how you felt insecure before you got into fitness. Right. So maybe you want to talk a bit about that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, you said it all. I mean, it's pretty simple. I wasn't happy, and I tried to pinpoint exact steps to take. And of course, over the years, I figured that the more I knew, the more I, spent time in the literature, I would, put my time to use better. And that's what I ended up doing. But yeah, I mean, it was initially just feeling unhappy, feeling like I didn't look like, I looked like a boy's body. Like I had a boy's body, and I didn't like that. So
you can see what I mean? Like, so you've got that, and there's a natural predisposition. So it's like, when I talk about, so it's like, so what I'm sort of saying is, you can see the differences in, say, an INTJ female that's comfortable in her body. There'll be a little bit more sexuality to her, the way she displays, than other IN types. I think INFJ females can do the same. I would also like
to interject.
Yeah.
And say, I mean, when I go out and I'm wearing a tight dress, I just wanted to say, like, when I'm wearing tight things that show my body off, it's not because I want to get any man excited. Like, it's genuinely because I want to look good for me. And I mean, I don't really care if, I mean, a funny story, we were at the grocery store a few months ago, and I had a nice dress on, a tight dress, and there were some women, like, obviously my husband brought it to my attention, some women, like, huddling together, looking at me and, like, whispering, I don't care. I mean, you know what I did? I stepped back and I looked at them, and I did a little twirl in my dress, and then we just continued shopping. I mean, it's just, I really don't care about how people perceive me. I want to feel like I look good. And I do have some days where I won't wear tight clothing. I'll wear a big t-shirt because I just don't feel like I look good that day. It's really centered around how I feel, and it's not to project, like, to be sexual or anything like that. It's just like, I want to feel like I look good.
that bit, that where you did that little 12, for me, that's Hailey's B-side ESFP coming out, where it's like, you just had a little ESFP moment.
But
Yeah, look at me.
I should say it
like
was
that.
almost like a confrontational, like, take a look at me.
Yeah, that's what ESFP, because that's one of the things I do in my theory, and it's something from Socionics, and even from the original Jung, the B side of the personality. And it's like, and even Dario has said that he has joked about his inner ESFP. And sometimes Dario's inner ESFP comes out. And there's a guy this guy who's been on my channel, Anthony Rodriguez. He DJs, and he's got a little bit of inner ESTP in him, where he looks like a hybrid between INFJ and ESTP. So there is that. So that's one of these things I can sort of, where you can see it coming out a little bit. But like I said, these other conditions where what is someone's self-image like, and that self-image can sort of cramp their natural style and showing the other side of their personality.
You know, it's, of course, you guys are going to know more than I am, but it's like moments like these where I feel like I don't have a problem getting confrontational, and I almost feel like it's necessary. Like, people really tick me off so much that I feel like I have to hold myself back sometimes. And again, I don't know if this is more of the 8 creeping out or...
Oh yeah. So actually what I've mentioned is, it's because I've got a relevancy here with Enneagram, because something... So Jonathan, may I mention the name of the person who came up with the positive and negative identifications for the instincts?
Catherine Farber.
Catherine Farber. So that was a very good idea of hers. And so this can sort of play into that, where it's like you can be negatively identified with your instinct. So Jonathan, social instinct, but he says that he's negatively identified with the social instinct. So you could say, Hailey, that you might have changed the way you've identified with your instinct, say before you got into fitness. And like I said, your own body image at the time, you may have been negatively identified with your sexual instinct, and now you're positively identified with it. So these sort of non-type factors and nuances in Enneagram can sort of
It's interesting.
help.
I don't know about positive now, but definitely moved away from negative.
Yeah. So Jonathan, could you say something about that, about how that might show in the, because you've described like the sexual 5. What does a sexual 5 look like that's got a negatively identified sexual 5?
I'm not sure what they look like, but what's going on in their head is, for all the sexual types, the positive sexual is thinking that they are attractive and desirable. They see themselves as attractive and desirable. The positive sexual instinct from a young age, they're told that, they agree with that, they are confident in that. Whereas the negative sexual subtypes don't see themselves as desirable or attractive, or they think they're the wrong type of desirable to attract the people they want. So there's more insecurity about how attractive they are. And what can happen is, if the positive sexual type, if the positive sexual subtype has some kind of negative experience, like that makes them feel ugly or attractive, however, it can be even more devastating than for the negative, because the negative is kind of used to it and then building himself up to it, whereas it's more of a shock for the positive sexual side if something like that happens. So it's really what's going on inside their head.
Yeah. So when I did a novelization of the start of my play, actually before I did the play, but I did a series where the character Rena was thinking about the kind of things that would go on in her head when she was choosing an outfit. And frequently you'll hear women say, like, they'll go through, is it too frumpy? Is it too tarty? And it's like these things, as you were saying there, Jonathan, what is the impression that's being given? And even if they are, say, sexual instinct, what kind of people are they going to try to attract? And their type is going to sort of bear into that, where, say, an INFP there's like these different balances in terms of what they see as sexy and what kind of man that's going to attract. And they have these sort of calculations, and part of it is that they don't want to look tarty and thinking about how other women are going to judge them. And I can see how those thoughts would vary by Enneagram fixation and via like positive and negative identification, where it's you don't get that inner thought process with males. Well, I guess with straight males, like going through all of these factors in terms of dress. The guy would just wear, oh, just put the same suit on I've been wearing for the past year.
Well, you would if there's sexual subtypes, so it's more.
Yeah, but there's less, and there's sort of things that they have considering.
Well,
sort of
maybe you just don't talk to the right men.
Maybe. Jonathan has frequently commented on the demographics of the guests on my channel.
Oh,
yes.
I just had one comment as far as that's concerned. It brings me back to when I was really deep in, studying just to get better at, reaching my goals quicker. And this was back before I came to Monaco, before I met my now husband, when I was roommating with other fun individuals. But what I would find is I would have allotted study time, but I wouldn't want to study, and I wouldn't see anyone else during the day until my roommates got home later. So, I mean, during the whole day, I was just alone, but I wouldn't want to go study and be alone until I felt satisfied with myself. And I don't know, I just find that so funny. Why would I care so much? I mean, I'm taking so much time, 20, 30 minutes to prepare myself to look good. I mean, it's going to affect my studying in zero, like it's stupid, but
yeah, I mean, you're such a good example of the sexual 5 in terms of like, in that you put a lot of effort into that area and you've achieved good results. And
thank you.
But what I know about the other side of you that spends a huge part of the day being 5 in doing all of the research, reading the PhD papers, all of the stuff about hypertrophy, and you go into it, and it's like, and you can see there's an example of the sexual 5, the approach of Hailey to it in such a 5 way, really like focusing like 90%, maybe like 10% typology, 90% on hypertrophy. And that's what you were like from like 2016 when I first interacted with you. And it's like,
I mean, yeah, don't you think it's silly? And I think it's silly also, but I can't deny that if I don't feel like I look good before I sit down to study with absolutely nobody around, I just don't feel like I can fully commit myself mentally. It brings a certain peace to myself when I feel like I'm at my best physically, and I don't understand it, and I don't really like it, but I like to be there. I like to do it.
Yeah, that's more the sexual thing. Maybe your first instinct is what you're more neurotic about. So the sexual instinct can be neurotic about how attractive they are and how they look and how they come amongst others. Whereas a self-praise, for example, might go to sexual and dress themselves up and look good in order to attract their mate, but once they get their mates, they just let it drop and relax and don't care what they wear so much. I don't care about the deep conversations, but it's more about re-establishing their comfortable lifestyle, but now they have their mate with them. That's how the self-praise will be seeing it. Whereas the sexual is more like, no, I need to care about this all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's pretty much how I feel. Okay, let's take a look really quick here. It is about 5:46, so I'm going to ask you guys if you have any closing things you wanted to discuss or anything else we missed. I guess I'm going to title this 5-wing 4 versus 5-wing 6. Or
yeah, I'll be quiet and just
regarding the title.
I'll be quiet. I'll just put some few things on screen in case the audience wishes to pause it and read through it. I'm just gonna zoom out. Just
Yep.
yeah, like Hailey with her hypertrophy.
Yeah,
And
you know, I have to say that it was a means to an end. I mean, I enjoy
Yeah.
certain aspects of it, but now that I feel like I've attained what I want, I've really stepped away from it and focused on doing what I wanted to do this whole time, which, I'm sorry to put it bluntly, was take pictures of my rear end. So I have largely stepped away from the research and the literature to focus on what I want to do most. But I mean, if need be, I will, you know, immerse myself back into it.
That's part of the cost benefit analysis of INTJ. Like, how well am I spending this time? I already know, and you've probably got to a point where it's like, well, I know so much where it's like I have to like spend more time just to learn that extra little bit that I
Right,
didn't
and
know before.
how much further is that going to progress me, and is it worth it? Totally.
Yeah, it's almost like that thing of where I get to where it's like, oh, I've got to put twice as much effort in just to get 10% better.
Right. Yep. You hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
So yeah, lately in the last year, 2 years, I felt really rusty, and I've kind of stepped away from sharing more fitness information for a few reasons, for the reasons I just discussed now, and also because I'm hitting my cynical point with people where I see how much work I put in, and then when someone messages me like some stupid question, like, look, okay, I understand everybody needs help and they've got jobs and lives and they're busy, but you have the internet just like I have the internet. And when people, I'm getting to my end with people. So for a few reasons, I feel like I'm stepping away from more of the literature or fitness side and just more into the boudoir and photography.
Yeah, well, see,
So
this is where the five helps people by sharing information and giving advice and so on. Whereas most people are sixes, and most people will be not as confident that they'll be looking for people to trust and experts to either test or ask questions of and get advice from. So what will happen is a lot of the people who are listening to you won't be as confident in what they're hearing from you, and they'll either distrust you or they'll trust you too much. In either way, they'll want to ask you questions and see what you know. Whereas if you're more 5, then that'll be very draining.
yeah, and that too,
Yeah,
you know, it's conflicting.
Yeah, it is worth thinking though that the 5, the 6, and the 7, they really do think about things in a fundamentally different way. Their attitude to thinking is fundamentally different, and their attitude to learning and so on is fundamentally different. And it's a subconscious thing, so they're not really aware of it. But like the 5 really wants to go deep and be the expert and have the knowledge and be confident in their own knowledge. The 7 is more like the breadth of knowledge and not taking knowledge too seriously, perhaps, and having more fun and studying what's interesting, and ignoring what doesn't interest them so much or dropping when it gets boring. Whereas the 6 is more like, what do I trust? Who do I not trust? What sources can I follow? That sort of thing.
Yeah, I'm a little bit like that, where
Yeah.
but where I go a little bit more like I want stuff to be I want the functions to be. I don't want the functions. The way I think about functions, I don't want them to contradict Kersey, and I don't want them to contradict cognitive psychology and neuroscience. So I am going, but again, Hailey and I both have a little bit of a scientific background, or training or education, where we go towards the data.
Well, not just the data, but also sources of authority and stuff, which is why I keep talking about Peter Schiff. Snarky.
Well, yeah, but he's right though. He's right, and but the thing is though, everybody, nearly the vast majority of people disagree with Maloney and Schiff, and so the actual authorities, they think, oh, everything's fine. I mean, everything's not going to collapse. But Hailey and I, we both know trouble's ahead.
Well, I have to comment. Go ahead, Jonathan.
I was going to say, I'll take your word for it. Go ahead, Hailey.
Well, yeah, I was just going to comment that I don't care about authority for the sake of it. I mean, if they've proven time and time again to come forward with objective data, like, hey, you know what? Like, they set their subjective feelings aside and say, hey, you know what? I want the truth. I don't want to be right. Yeah. And they've proven themselves to do that. Then I'll be like, okay, for the sake of it, this is the authority. But just to say authority, I don't give two craps about.
Yeah. I mean, also, when I look at somebody, it's like I see that a person can be wrong on this, or it's like with Peter Schiff. Peter Schiff says a lot of stuff on social issues that are FI polar, because like he's ENTP. Like, so it's like, oh, you shouldn't have said that, Peter. So,
yeah. Well, the six doesn't necessarily think of them as authoritative figures. That's more how the literature terms it. But the six will have strong feelings about authority, love or hate.
Yeah, but
that's the main
again,
thing.
The thing is, though, most of the sixes that you're describing, when you talk about the six, a lot of that fits the Guardian six, whereas the NT who's a six, part of the NT temperament is thinking for yourself. It's the autonomy of thought. And so they will look at, so for instance, the way I look at Victor, I will say he's got a lot of good ideas. There's some other things I don't agree with. And there's some things in Kersey. I agree with most things in Kersey, but I can see little errors where it's like, Enneagram will help to nuance this. And so I don't see anybody as perfect. And because the NT is going to, NT will analyze everything somebody says and not take it on trust. Because they're going to think for themselves because they're an NT. Whereas the Guardian is naturally going towards authority. So, yes, I want a good source, a source I can trust, but it's a little bit less than, say, a Guardian. So, and if people want to know more about this, see the trilogy of videos on how the Enneagram 6 varies by Kersey temperament and Jungian type. Janae's idea, by the way.
It's starring me.
Yes.
So, go ahead.
No, that was it. Go.
I just had one more question, and then we can wrap this up here. And this is going back to the sexual 5 type. Or I guess we could be more specific, the sexual 5 INTJ, or just sexual 5. Yeah, I guess you would know best, but would they also be very much like in terms of sex, would they be very much like the woman in that they're very, of course, it's going to depend on the person, I understand that, but just as a general scope, do you think that males are also going to be very much focused on their appearance and, external?
Male sexual types period will be very focused on their appearance. So, yeah, stereotypically, you might think sexuals are more women, but really all sexual types will be like that. Sexual types in general will have a strong sense of their masculinity or their femininity and how they dress and how attractive they are. So it'll manifest differently according to the sex and the person, really. But they'll both have that. They'll both be concerned with it. So, yeah, obviously, your average sexual man might not be concerned with makeup or whatever as much, but
right.
they'll have their own version. They'll like the colon and the colas and things like that.
Do you think a 5-wing 4 male sexual would be more concerned, just as a general, than a 5-wing 6 sexual type?
I think they'd be just as concerned. It would just manifest slightly differently. I'm trying to think of a sexual. I'm calling blank at the moment on a sexual 5-wing 6, but I'm sure they exist. Yeah,
I'll just say that the way it manifests is going to be affected by culture. See, you can imagine, like, say, if in a certain area, you might have the more metrosexual 5-wing sexual 5, but if they're in a certain more, again, what is their culture? It's like how it manifests. So this is something that Jeff talks about a lot, how the artisan temperament manifests, and it's about what's the motivation, what's the preference, and it's going to be maybe in this area as well.
Well, I can't think of a sexual 5 man, but he's a serial killer, so not the best example.
Great. Yeah. Okay. Wow. I guess that's about it. If you guys have any closing remarks now. You guys there?
Yeah, you're breaking up a bit though.
Okay. Well, I guess it's just as well.
Well,
It's time to head out.
hopefully we'll be back for number 3 next month.
Sounds good. And Jonathan, you're welcome to join us anytime. Thank you very much for being on and imparting some of your wonderful information with us.
You're welcome.
So I guess that's about it. I know nothing else. All right. Thank you very much.